All right. Hello, Georgia.
Hello, Emily. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. So this is for everyone who's going to be watching the replay. Basically, I have invited Georgia on for all of us to hear a little bit about her very inspiring, incredible journey, where she's taken her personal journey, her challenges and her personal journey, and managed to completely turn them around and use them for helping others. It's turning pain into passion and purpose, and it's what I'm all about as well. And I love it, love it, love it. And so I do not want to waste too much time because this isn't going to be a long video. But I would love for Georgia, if you could just give a quick introduction about who you are, very briefly what you do, because I want to focus actually on your personal journey,
Okay.
and the specific like tools that you found along the way. So if you just give a quick intro and then go into your journey.
Okay. Fab. I'm Georgia. I'm 29. I'm from England, living in Tel Aviv, and I'm a women's coach. I'm a self-love, body love coach, and I really help women to understand their worth right now, as they are, and they are perfect as they are right now, and helping them build their life and not focused on what the scale says or when they have to reach an obtainable goal, but really focusing on their life right now and building up their worth and coming to a loving, accepting place with their bodies and understanding that our bodies are our homes and cultivating that loving dialogue with ourselves and with our bodies.
Beautiful. You mentioned earlier when we spoke primary food. So can you give us a little bit about that?
Yes, absolutely. So for me, what I love to talk to women about, and I work with women on primary foods and secondary foods. And secondary foods are the foods on our plate, but our primary foods are what build us up. It's that soul nourishment, and that is what feeds us. And if you think of a plate and all the things, all the different things on our plate that feed us up, so our relationships, if we have a spiritual practice, our hobbies, our home life, our friends, our career, all these things that feed our soul and give us nourishment. And we often don't focus on those, or we're focused on one thing and what feels wrong there, and then everything else is out of whack. But once we kind of zone out and really build up our lives that way and focus on finding balance in all of these areas, that's how we really find soul nourishment and coming back home to ourselves and really understanding ourselves and our self-worth and creating that life that we want and that we can have.
Amazing. I love, love, love this concept of primary food. It's really, really awesome. Okay, so please tell us a little bit about your personal journey and how you came to be this self-love, body love coach with primary food as your I want to hear the journey.
So, okay, for sure. So I was living in England, and very much, I think it was before, it was when I was at school, I came on my period when I was so young. I was 11 years old, and I just remember everyone else. I was, in this kind of woman's body that was growing before any of my peers were. And I started to get hips and breast, and I started to remember feeling so uncomfortable in my body, and it was from such a young age. And then growing up at school, feeling kind of so uncomfortable in myself and feeling a bit of an outsider. And as I grew up, it got worse, and developed an eating disorder, and all the girls around me all constantly judging myself and comparing myself and feeling so alien in this body and hating this body and hating myself and feeling like I'm not worthy enough of what do I bring to this world and not knowing where I fit. And I developed an eating disorder from that. And I used to binge and purge a lot, and binging for me was kind of my way of hiding, or it's my way of beating myself up because I didn't know how to voice my needs. And I'd get so angry with myself, so I'd shovel it down with food, or I'd want to numb from the world. So what did I do? I shoveled it down with food, and food became this, well, it was everything for me. I mean, I hated it, but it was all I knew, and it would keep me stuck. And I would basically just hide from the world, and I was so sad in my soul, and it was so dark, but it was also something that was so shameful to talk about. And I felt that there was something so wrong with me. And looking at everyone thinking, well, they've got a perfect life because they've got it all sussed out, or they've got a perfect body, and thinking that once I sorted out the food and once I had this perfect body, that I would be happy and everything would be okay. But of course, it's just not what it was about at all. And I wasn't focusing on my primary foods. I wasn't nourishing myself. I didn't actually also know who I was. And when you suffer with an eating disorder, it does that. It kind of rips away every essence of you, and you think that you are just this eating disorder. I didn't know who Georgia Barnett was. I was just
Identify with
stuck
it.
in this. Exactly. That was me. And I couldn't understand that it was this voice that was separate to me because it felt like me, and that I'm not good enough. But then I would binge it. Why, you're an idiot? Why did you do that? Beating myself up, constantly, like body checking, constantly feeling so not at home in myself and not knowing where to turn, but also not being able to reach out. And that was such a difficult part of the process. And also, having parents that didn't quite understand. My sister was this small, skinny thing with perfect boobs, and I'd see the way my mum looked at her, and so then I created this narrative in my mind that that's what it meant to be loved. And my mum was amazing, but she did the best she could, but she carried on old stories from her mother, which then filtered onto me about dieting and having to look a certain way. And so these were all these messages that I was fed. And it just carried on through university. I remember being just kind of so miserable. And then what happened is, after university, then I moved to London, and working at Women's Health magazine was my dream. And I got this job at Women's Health magazine thinking that, it was going to solve everything. I was going to be in this world, when actually it just was worse, and it just kind of fed that. And I went traveling to run away, but really you don't ever run away from yourself. And it was in that place when I was, in Australia and New Zealand, and I was so lonely and I couldn't meet people, and I would turn to the food. But that is so lonely in itself, because it doesn't give you happiness that the eating disorder kind of tells you that it does, and it keeps you stuck in this place. And I got back from traveling, and I knew that this was bigger than me and I needed help. So I went to an eating disorder clinic in London, and it was this wonderful holistic clinic, and we meditated every morning, and we did art therapy. And in those moments, I just started writing poetry, and all this poetry would just pour out of me. And I started to relearn, who is Georgia Barnett? Like, what does nourish my soul? What do I love to do? And I had to relearn all those things. And it was painful. But I'm so appreciative for that process, because really the only way out is in. And I had to connect so much with myself and go into that place and understand who I was, and also where these triggers came from, and to rewrite that narrative. And I realized that I was yearning for something more, and I didn't feel that I could have that in London. So I came to Israel basically on holiday. And I remember going to this festival in the desert. Everyone was dancing, and they were so alive, and they were connected to their bodies, and they were so free. And I yearned for that feeling. And that was after therapy. That was kind of where this journey really started, because I wanted to nourish my soul. And so when I first moved here, I longed for the sisterhood and these connections and these relationships where I could just be myself. Because part of the pain for me in England was that I couldn't be myself. It was be you, but don't quite be you. You've got to go to this university, you've got to get this job, you've got to look a certain way. And I was stuck in that world. So finally I could just be. So I found a women's circle that ran every month. It was a full moon circle where women got together, and it was mostly international women. And I just sat around marveling at each and every beautiful woman that was just so themselves, and they came and they shared vulnerably, and they could just be however they needed to be. And I too could be however I needed to be, talk about whatever I needed to talk about. And no one was judging me on what my body looked like, or my weight, or what my job was. It was just really seeing me and accepting me. And that for me was such a huge part of my healing. And I knew that working with women was what I was supposed to do. And that if I knew that earlier, so I knew that I had this experience for a reason, and that I went through that to help other women. And since then, so that was 2016, And so I was still doing content writing, but I also did a health and nutrition coaching course to be a health coach. And then I did a life coaching course. And then I understood that I really wanted to dig deep into my experiences and help other women really kind of come to that relationship where they feel at home in their bodies as well. And so that's how it evolved. And I really went on this journey, and I went down the rabbit hole so many times. And that's what I say to women, that it's not linear, and recovery is not a straight path. And it's so like this. And even though you go back down a rabbit hole or a pothole, or you face these big boulders, in those moments you learn so much about yourself, and you really kind of find that inner strength. And it's about honoring that, and like being that warrior goddess that we are. And I'm so grateful for that, because in those dark moments you really do find that strength. And I was so grateful for finding that women's circle, that then I started running that women's circle and more women's circles. And during Corona time, where me and my friend, who we run women's circles together, we realized that there was this need for the collective to come together. We needed to raise morale. Women were away from their loved ones or their partners or their families, and we just wanted to bring that sisterhood connection together. So I created a monthly workshop called Body Love Talks, and it was just about coming back home to our bodies, because when stress happens in life, that fight or flight comes, and it's so easy for us now in this day and age to disconnect with our phones, to go on Instagram, which then makes us feel worse about ourselves, or to disconnect from our bodies, or to numb with food or alcohol or whatever those are that you use, those little vices. It's become so easy, but we hold so much emotion and trauma in our body that often we disconnect from. So it's so important in my job as a coach to help women to really come back to their body and to be with a feeling, because we're not taught to be with our feelings. And it's so uncomfortable sometimes to feel the feels, and we don't want to, but it's part of the human experience. And that is where the healing happens. And so in our circles, we really just encourage women to come back home to ourselves. And also, we're so hard on ourselves. So it's so important to recultivate that loving dialogue. And, our brain has a funny way of going straight to looking at the negative or giving us a reason of why we're not good enough. So it's about rewriting that dialogue and reminding ourselves that we are good enough, and really just getting rid of all the old stories and making space, because our body has so much wisdom and she really knows what's good for us, but we often disconnect from that, or we can't even connect to the hunger cues or what she needs right now or what movement she needs. So it's about helping women to come back to that and to really come back to that mindful place, and really hearing that loving dialogue. And so through meditation and loving movement, and sometimes it's hard for women to just dance and to just let go and to just be free, but each time it happens, watching how exhilarating and freeing it is every single time for each woman that comes, it just proves that like coming back home to the body is coming back home. And through journaling techniques, for me, writing poetry and art therapy and journaling is so cathartic. And when we just write from the heart and we just release and we just let it go, so much comes out. And when we're stuck in our monkey mind and we're stuck on that hamster wheel, it's so hard to distinguish between these are just thoughts, they're not facts. But because we have said these negative thoughts over and over and over and over again, we believe them to be facts. So when we slow everything down and we journal and we can reflect, we can see that it's not real, and we don't have to attach ourselves to this, and that we can rewrite our story at any time. So especially during Road time, that was so important for us to offer that, because I even experienced, and I say this a lot, for me it's so important to be vulnerable and to say that yes, I struggled with an eating disorder, but it doesn't mean that the triggers aren't going to come back again. It doesn't mean that I'm my brain is fixed and I don't have those thoughts. And I went back to England to be with my parents, and I got stuck in England, and of course the food triggers came up.
I think I've lost you.
Oh, we're there.
Hold on.
I'm back.
You're back.
Are you back?
Yes.
So I wanted to offer a safe space for women to be able to talk about whatever's coming up, whether it's, because we were stuck inside in isolation and we couldn't move our bodies the way that we were used to, or maybe we were eating differently, or other triggers were coming up, or people that were living with causing us frustration and anxiety. It was such a stressful time. So to create a safe and loving space where women can come and just be however they need to be, talk about whatever they're going through and just release, is so healing and empowering. And as women, even though our journeys are different, they're so intertwined and we can all really relate to what's going on in each other's lives. And soul sister connection was such a part of my healing. I really feel passionate about offering that and giving that to other women, because to have a place just to come back to and to feel safe, we're constantly kind of judging ourselves, and we're also feeling judged by others, or we need to be a certain way, or we need to look a certain way, or we need to be like this in our job, we need to be, it's exhausting. So just having a place we can just let it all out and also be is transformational. So many women have learned so much about themselves, primary foods, and have even changed their career, made drastic changes lives, realization, wow, this more path. So I feel like I've just been blabbering, but that's at the root of my passion and where it came from. And because finding women's circles was so important to offer that and give back in that way.
Amazing. Towards the end, I think we lost you a little bit. The connection's not great, so
okay.
About that, guys, in the replay watching this. I think the last couple of minutes the last couple of seconds we missed a little bit, but I think that we understood everything that you said. It so resonates as well with what it is that I advocate and promote all the time. There were many things that you mentioned that I'd like to just kind of pick out for the viewers as well. Is that well, first thing is what you focus on women, which I think it's incredible and it's awesome that you do that. But I do think that a lot of it applies completely to men as well, with regards to body image, with regards to comparison and judgments and everything. Like I think it's all 100%. Also, the going through the puberty for men, it's a parallel kind of process. I think for men too.
Totally.
I just wanted to say that because we do have some men here. But I did
for sure, and I honor that.
Yeah, I wanted to just pick up on a few things that you mentioned that I think are so powerful and so important. The idea that I focus a lot on self-healing, the self-healing consultant and self-healing space, where a lot of it is reparenting. You mentioned about your mother and our parents do their best. They do whatever it is that they do their best with what they know, but they're not taught the tools either, so they can't pass the tools on. And what they do pass on is what they know, which is often also generational trauma, ancestral trauma. They pass on what they received from their parents, and often it's traumatic, it's traumatizing, it's hard stuff. It's a lot of inner critic stuff that you mentioned as well, and I think that also with regards to the eating and the eating disorders, you also mentioned towards the end that it's everyone finds their vice and their tool to try and cope because we don't have healthier tools. So for you it was food. I also dabbled in eating disorders to try and see if that could help me like figure things out or cope, and I ended up going down drugs and alcohol was my vice. But I think that also is something. We try to find whatever we have available to us to help us numb or, get through because we don't know how to regulate. We don't know how to regulate our emotions. We don't know how to feel our emotions. We don't know how
Yeah.
to sit with discomfort. You mentioned that as well. Sitting with discomfort and feeling our emotions is something that we are so, just unequipped to do.
Yeah.
And it's something
So
so
unequipped.
basic and fundamental that, like, I as I'm an organizational consultant and I'm disillusioned with our system, and I'm all about educational reform, which is why I try to provide as many free tools and resources, because I just want to, give people the tools that we needed when we were growing up. Basically, that's my tagline. So
Absolutely.
I think that there's so much that you touched upon that's like exactly what, we're trying to do here in this space as well. So that's awesome. But yeah, reparenting, learning to listen to ourselves, to learning to meet our own needs.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
something that we're just not taught to do, and it's so sad and it's so tragic, and so many people do get stuck. You also mentioned with our thoughts not being our thoughts. So a lot of what I advocate is the first step is realizing that you are not your thoughts. You are the observer of your thoughts. You experience it, you can see it, but we identify with our thoughts because it's what we know. It's what we're familiar with. It's such a pattern. We just repeat these old stories, these old narratives. Um, and then basically, once we wake up and become aware of the fact that we are not our thoughts and we can consciously change them, it takes practice, it takes commitment, it takes showing up and stepping up and, showing up for yourself every day to change them. But, the minute you realize that, that's so empowering. And then you really start doing the work and consciously choosing how you want to think. And it's so possible and so doable. And then when you do it, you realize you get unstuck. But yeah, I think everything that you mentioned is amazing. It's incredible. I did want to ask you, you mentioned with the groups for women, is that only in Israel, or do you have online workshops that are virtual as well for international women?
Yeah, so we started, they were just in person in Israel. And then during Corona time, because I was in England, so many women or people all over the world went back to their home countries, or were drifted or stuck or whatever. So we brought it on Zoom. So we have new moon circles on Zoom, which are just so special because we had women from Poland and Switzerland and America, and it was a total global circle, and that was
Mhm.
incredible to see during Corona time, and it's still going now. And I have a Facebook group called the Self Love Club, but I also run with two other incredible goddesses a Facebook group called the Goddess Temple. And every day, this also came from Corona, of this wanting to give the ladies in our group something every day to just raise morale. So we created empowered live sessions, and every day we have a Facebook live mini 15 to 20-minute workshop on a different subject, and that it's live, but there's also replays. And we also have a YouTube channel where we upload the mini workshops. It's everything from life coaching to meditation. I used to do quarantine cuisine, and women would bake along with me, and it gave them something out of their day. And
Amazing.
yoga and lots of different things like that. And then we also run online Zoom workshops, so anyone from all around the world can tune in, which has been so special and has just kind of strengthened that sisterhood connection.
Amazing,
And
amazing, amazing.
just like what you said about, oh sorry, go on. Yes,
I'll put all the links in.
amazing. I just wanted to touch on what you said about reparenting, and and that we don't have the tools. And so these kind of mini little nuggets of wisdoms, we really want women to create this new toolbox, and to add these little wisdoms into their toolbox, so that they do have these tools. So when their triggers arise, or they're feeling stressed, or they want to jump away and numb, to say, okay, I'm going to open this toolbox, and I'm going to use this. I know I have this. And okay, can I connect to my breath? What can I do right now for myself? Can I go to my journaling? Can I phone a friend? How can I move my body that's going to help me connect to my body? And so just helping women to really kind of recultivate new tools, because we're not taught them. And if only children at school would learn this right now, and I feel really passionately about that. And I think about when I'm going to be a mum, and kind of how I will want to teach my kids and my daughter, and to build her up so she knows her worth from being, really young. And I went to an all girls private school where, like, we all had to be the same, and we all had to work towards going to Oxford University, and we all had to wear the same uniform. And, and it wasn't like individuality and being unique isn't celebrated. So it's so important to celebrate our uniqueness.
100%. I mean, that very much is a close sentiment to my heart, because when I started trying to figure out what my passion is, what my purpose is, I did this exercise, and it took you back to your traumas and your the struggles and the pains that you went through, and it said what's like the underlying, like the common denominator, what's going on there, and that is your purpose, that's your passion, to pass that, like to help others with that. And for me, it was a lack of self-love.
Yeah.
I really, really lacked self-love, self-worth, self-respect. I was addicted in a way to just self-abuse. I thought that that's what I was worth. That's what I deserved. I kept putting myself unconsciously into abusive situations.
Same here.
It
It's
was
exactly. I resonate with you so much.
It's self-love is so important, and I am a mother, and I'm planning on writing children's books and on tools for teens and stuff like that focuses on these kind of tools, how we can kind of give it to them, because I don't know if I'm going to be able to reform the education system, so I'll do what I can. I can write a children's book, so
absolutely. It's also been a dream of mine. Yeah, for sure.
I love that.
Yeah, amazing. and we're still on the same level. I'm like, but also kind of what it does all come down to self-love, and when you're in that place of when you don't know your worth, and I was also there, I self-sabotaged all the time. But I learned when I started my journey that it comes in different ways that you don't even know about, and not being able to put up boundaries, that's a huge form of kind of self-sabotage and getting ourselves in those situations, because it's just another way to beat ourselves up. And so really helping women understand the importance of boundaries and how we can set boundaries to us, but also that helps us stay connected to that self-love and what feels good for us. And often we don't know, because we're so used to doing things that just perpetuate that self-sabotage and that voice, that inner critic that just gives us another reason to beat ourselves up. So just really, really kind of cultivating that self-loving dialogue and putting up boundaries and understanding our worth, and knowing that self-love and self-acceptance isn't just saying, oh, I'm fabulous and I've got everything sorted. Like, no, it's being ourselves where we're at and passion for where
missed the last
we
bit again.
have all our ducks in a row.
Can you just repeat the last sentence?
Oh, just that, it's not about having to be perfect.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so before we wrap up, what is, I guess, if you could say one thing, one tool that has been really like a lifesaver for you, what would it be?
I would have to say for sure is connection. For me, it's women connection. So not necessarily for everyone else, but for me, that sisterhood connection of having a community where I can be vulnerable, and I can really talk, and reaching out was so integral for me, because when you suffer with an eating disorder, you're stuck in the guilt and the shame, and it's this dirty little secret. And so having a place to really be able to share and to be able to just be so women connection, women's circles, workshops, retreats, that is my passion, and was such a huge healing for me.
You know what's interesting about that, when you say connection is your one biggest tool, that straight away that brings up for me in childhood feeling seen and feeling heard, and those are the two main fundamental needs of a child, to feel seen and heard. Attachment, that's that's like our fundamental need in childhood. So that's amazing that you know that that's the one thing that really, you know, that's the tool that's really helped you through it. It's connection with others. So that's
Yeah,
amazing. Thank
absolutely.
Georgia, thank you for coming on. Thank you for you know sharing your story,
Thank you so
and
much for inviting
thank you
me.
for everything that you're doing with it's amazing, absolutely amazing. And I definitely will put all the links into the description, etc. And any new tools and workshops and any that I offer, please send my way. And yes, it's been a pleasure. Thank
Definitely. Thank you. Thank you. I'm honored. Always,
you.
so important for me to be able to talk about it and to share. So thank you for having me.